Hello my dear students, here is again your computer Wunsem, and today I will show you how to program. Programming is how you as a user get computers to solve problems. Problems can be mentioned as computer programs, and the possibility of creating computer programs is the main idea behind programming in itself. Programming has its parts in the software development, because without any programming structures, without any programming, there's most likely no possibility to create any software at all. Even in our modern times, where you don't need necessarily programming languages, there's mostly no point of getting away with them, because you always need some mathematical equation and so on and so forth to finish the task of programming. However, that doesn't mean that programming is purely mathematical. I always think it is more of an artistical workplace, but everyone has the different opinions on this case. On the other hand, there is no part in the world where there is no programming. We are using programming everywhere, in TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, any social media platform, in any database, anywhere we can imagine it. And especially for my case, we are using it in video games to create these amazing worlds which are possible by the most modern games of Mario, Zelda, or even the other franchises. Programming is, as I said, everywhere. It is in smartphones, it is in any app that you can imagine. It is in tablets, it is in normal computers, it could even be in your fridge. You can encounter programming really anywhere. And to program, you need a so-called programming language. A programming language is a set of commands which are more or less saved, and you can write these commands in your own form of text to say that the computer should do this, do this, do this, or do this. However, you need a specific syntax to make the computer programs work the correct way. This is the only point which is necessary, because without the correct syntax, the computer isn't capable of working correctly. Every single programming language has its own syntax. There is a multitude of programming languages which can do the syntax in themselves, like Java, C# or Python. These are some of the most famous programming languages as stated of 2023. And there are even some more programming languages to teach you programming, like Scratch or Sonic Pi, which are amazing in themselves. There are, however, some other programming languages like PHP or JavaScript or something else which are connected to other forms of programming. So how does the machine in fact understand to program? That's the big question. And this answer here is the compiler. The compiler is capable of transforming the programming language into a machine language, which means that the compiler has this task of changing the language which we are using into a language which is understandable for the machine. Therefore, we need the compiler to create our own programming languages on the one hand, but on the other, so that the machine can in fact read what we are actually doing or what we want it to do. For our programming language, we use C#. C# is an amazing programming language because it is used in Unity, which is one of the biggest gaming platforms imaginable. And it has even the properties to change anything in Unity you want. However, it's not only used in game development, because one of the most important aspects of usage is in .NET. .NET is a programming environment, more or less, which is connected to Azure, and it is mainly used by the C# programming, for the C# programming language, because it is a part of Microsoft. Another advantage of C# is that it is so similar to Java that the change between Java or C# isn't too hard. And in the end, we are using an own online compiler for our cases, which is called programiz. Programiz is an online compiler because it is easy to set up by just pressing the link and then just running any program we want. For the moment we are only using simple one-filed programs, so it shouldn't be any problem. So let's get started with our programiz. So here we are now in programiz. Programiz is, like I said, an online compiler which can be used to compile anything we want. Here in our case we already have a prepared program. That's why I love to use this little online app, because no matter where you are, you're always starting with these lines here. This means you don't need to prepare too much to create any program. To start is, in fact, here we have this programming structure. This here above are just comments which aren't read by the code. However, this is the most important part, because here we have the specific properties of any programming language which we want to use. We are using system, which is a so-called namespace. It has some materials which we can use for our little program here. And then we have the so-called class. A class is a structure which has all commands we need necessary to finish a specific task. Here in our case we have only the class hello world. And then this confusing little thing is necessary for programming, because it reads everything which is here written in the brackets and then follows these commands. So if we have this little command here, here's console.writeLine hello mono world, and then press 1, then the compiler works, and as you can see it creates the specific output called hello mono world. We can write down anything we want in here. Between these quotation marks we can write even something absolutely weird. By the way, I have so-called umlauts in my keyboard. This is a little bit amusing because the computer can't in fact read these umlauts. But the main thing is that we can write everything we want. And just by pressing 1, the following code will be produced. It will always take a little bit of time because we are in a so-called online compiler. This means it goes online, sends the data and sends the data back, and then we can get the result. This console write line is just very small, but we can create so much more if we want. We can even write the next sentence here. However, if we write this only, then you can see that there is a small error. At first you can see here, this thing here is expected. So I need to write down a semicolon. However, the name small does not exist in the current context. This means that small in itself doesn't exist, because it isn't mentioned in the programming language of C#. We can create a method called small, but that's a little bit later. For the moment we will keep it simple by only using the console.writeLine commands. I can again write console writeLine small, and as you can see it will create another error. This is simply because we have written writeLine with a small l. This is unfortunate because this isn't so unfortunate because it only requires to be exactly the same as the command which is remembered here. So writeLine with a small l isn't the same as writeLine with a capital L. So what we can do is in fact even create some empty lines, and so much more if we want. And sometimes you need to run it twice or thrice, or sometimes I even forget something by myself. Now it should be working. Oh, as you can see, The online compiler is still a little bit strange, but it does the works usually perfectly, which we need for the following courses. And I think it is a good start by using the online compiler, because it doesn't need too much of a setup, and you can just open the link in here and select in the specific online compiler we need. So now we can start programming. You can experiment with it a little bit more even, but for the moment I thank you for your attendance, and I can't wait to see your amazing programs. Your Computerwunder.